A rock that students call a symbol of racism has been removed from University of Wisconsin. $50,000 to remove a 42-ton boulder. It's a rock. Demand for racism outstrips supply at this point. Okay, we now have a couple more stories along these lines. So over the last 24 hours, the Colorado Rockies decided that it was necessary to investigate a man who supposedly was shouting the N-word at Miami Marlins outfielder Lewis Brinson during his at-bat. According to the New York Post, quote, this is the original story, Rockies investigating after fan hurls racial slur at Marlins player. Okay, from that headline, you would determine that the fan was hurling a racial slur at the Marlins player. After all, that is the entire headline. And in fact, people were tweeting this thing out, including blue check marks. The Colorado Rockies put out a statement saying, the Colorado Rockies are disgusted at the racial slur by a fan directed at the Marlins' Lewis Brinson during the 9th inning of today's game. Although the subject was not identified prior to the end of the game, the Rockies are still investigating this incident. The Rockies have zero tolerance for any form of racism or discrimination, and any fan using derogatory language of any kind will be ejected and barred from Coors Field. Okay, and then a statement was put out by the Major League Baseball Players Association Executive Director and former Yankee Tony Clark. He said, it is a painful reality that progress continues to be elusive in a world where ignorance and bigotry remain all too commonplace. Okay, so again, this is always the idea, is that one instance of racism means that everybody is racist and racism still runs rife throughout American life. That in and of itself is really stupid. Right? An isolated incident is isolated and noteworthy because it is isolated and also noteworthy. Okay, an isolated incident, if it is indicative of broad national trends, generally is not isolated. And you can name many instances of this sort of stuff happening. But this was a national story. Literally one person supposedly shouting the N-word at a baseball player. You had the Major League Baseball Players Association commenting on this. You had Major League Baseball itself commenting on this. You had the Colorado Rockies commenting on all this. Okay, then the Rockies started to do an investigation. And what they found is that the man was not, in fact, shouting the N-word. In fact, here is the video of the man not shouting the N-word. He is not shouting the N-word here. He is shouting at the Colorado Rockies mascot, whose name is Dinger. Okay, he's shouting at the mascot. Here's what the tape sounded like.
3 yesterday. Here's the 1-0. And again, it's 2-0. And this is not to pick on.
Okay, he's not shouting the N-word. He's shouting Dinger. Dinger, that's the name of the team's mascot. A Denver news reporter, this is the New York Post the next day, right, walking it back. A Denver news reporter who spoke to the Rockies organization said the team interviewed the fan about the incident. The Rockies tell me last night's incident was a fan shouting to get the attention of the Rockies mascot Dinger, not a racial slur. The Rockies have spoken to the fan who confirms this is the case. They've also reviewed the video from the local broadcast. So a lot of people, again, in the blue checkmark world had decided this was indicative of Major League Baseball fans more generally or America more generally. But as it turns out, that wasn't the story at all. And now the Colorado Rockies had to put out an update on this, in which they admitted that the fan was indeed yelling for Rockies mascot Dinger in hopes of getting his attention for a photo, and there was never any racial slur that occurred. The Rockies remain dedicated to providing an inclusive environment for all fans, players, and guests at Coors Field, and any fan using derogatory language of any kind will be ejected from Coors Field. Okay, well, thank you for that meaningless notification, considering that nobody said anything racist. Okay, this was a massive national story. It was a major national story. That a guy was supposedly yelling the N-word at a black baseball player when he was, in fact, not. And that was not the only story that is like this. CNN reports today, quote, a rock that students call a symbol of racism has been removed from University of Wisconsin. Okay, now you may notice that there's a little bit of hedging in that particular title, right? A rock that students call a symbol of racism. So is the rock a symbol of racism? Or is the rock not a symbol of racism? Well, as it turns out, the rock is absolutely not a symbol of racism. In fact, there's pretty much no evidence that the rock was ever a symbol of racism. According to CNN itself, the University of Wisconsin removed a 42-ton boulder from its Madison campus on Friday after complaints from students of color who called the rock a symbol of racism. Chamberlain Rock, which had sat on Observatory Point since 1925, was named after Thomas Chamberlain, a geologist and former university president who served from 1887 to 1892. So, what's racist about that? Was Thomas Chamberlain a vicious slave-holding racist or something? Nope. There was one article from the Wisconsin State Journal in 1925 that used the N-word as part of a nickname for the giant boulder. That's the whole thing. An article that used the N-word in a nickname for the rock. And now they spent, I kid you not, $50,000 to remove a 42-ton boulder for no reason other than apparently students of color at the University of Wisconsin are offended by a rock. That is not racist, because it's a rock. That is not racist. The Wisconsin Black Student Union last summer called for the rock to be removed from campus as one of a series of demands it said were aimed at seeking justice for black students. The campaign came in the wake of the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Senior Nala McWhorter said in a university news release, quote, "It was very meaningful for me to be there and to see the process all the way through to the end." McWhorter, who was the president of the Wisconsin Black Student Union for the past academic year, was there when the boulder was removed on Friday. Quote, "It was about a year ago that we released our demands and met with the chancellor and explained to her why those demands meant so much to us. It was a powerful moment today to see this demand come full circle." Amazing. Amazing. By the way, the rock also had to be removed because a Native American student organization named Wunk Sheik partnered with the Wisconsin Black Student Union in the rock removal effort because the boulder sat on ancestral Ho-Chunk land. The university actually had to get permission from the Wisconsin Historical Society to remove the boulder because it sat within the area of a Native American burial mound, according to the university. So they moved the rock because nothing. Because literally nothing. There's no evidence that the rock is racist. Nobody sees the rock as racist. It's a rock. It's a rock. Literally the most they can say is that an article from about 100 years ago used the N-word while referring to the rock. The chancellor's office is using private donations to pay the $50,000 price tag for the rock's removal, the university said. It's now being moved to university-owned land near Lake Kegonsa, southeast of Madison. First of all, I don't think that's appropriate. I think this rock has to go directly in the lake, right? I mean, it's a racist rock. Just removing it to another piece of land, doesn't that make that piece of land racist? I've been reliably informed that according to, as James Lindsay says, critical rock theory, this rock is a foundation stone for systemic racism. So just moving it to another piece of land somewhere isn't going to do it. It must be buried deep under. Actually, we can't even bury it deep underground. We need to shoot it into the sun. That is the only way to cleanse this planet of racism. This rock, some idiot in 1925 used the N-word to refer to the rock. The only way to solve this problem is to build the world's largest trebuchet and fire the rock into orbit. Hopefully out of orbit. Hopefully it doesn't even stay orbiting the planet. It needs to go. We need to chisel this thing down to sand. That's the other possibility. Every white person in America owes a duty to go with a chisel and a hammer and chisel this giant rock down to sand. Only then will racism be alleviated in the United States. If you're getting the feeling that people are lazy and stupid in the United States and that they spend a lot of time worrying about things that really ought not be worried about, that would be correct. That our media are too lazy and stupid to actually investigate the true stories of these things. And if they do, they are too pusillanimous to actually stand up and say, wait a second, you're telling me that somebody's supposed to spend $50,000 to move a giant-ass rock because somebody called it a racist term 100 years ago? Are you out of your mind? I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.